Hello and welcome to another edition of Fide's podcast. My name is Jerry Serino and I'm your host, and I'm here with talent on loan from Rush. I am joined today by Maya Rodriguez. She is a young pro life influencer, and she is making a difference just like so many of her fellow young people. And I love finding people like Maya who are out there who are being a leader in the area of in the on the fight for life. She's doing great stuff, and she's here to just talk to us a little bit about what she's doing, what her background, and maybe get her opinion on a few life topics. So Maya, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jerry. I'm really happy to be here today.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I want to start. I always like to know a little bit more about my guests, especially if it's someone like you who, is out there. You post on social media, which is great because other people your age and the like are seeing the pro-life message you're putting out there, and I think that that's really important. But I always like to know about people's background. Tell us as much as you're willing to share about your upbringing, your family, and then I'd love to know what got you into the pro life movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in Michigan in a place called Ypsilanti. Um,
Hmm.
it's kind of like outside of Detroit. It's closer to Ann Arbor if you know where that is. But basically, I grew up in Detroit. My parents were pastors as I was growing up. So I was always very conservative growing up. And I never really knew why I believed what I believed, but I always knew that I believed it and I was right in my beliefs. And so my dad's side of the family, they're Puerto Rican. Both of my grandparents came over from Puerto Rico. My grandfather lived in Chicago and then moved to Detroit and met my grandmother. They got married. And then my dad came along. And so I was born and raised there underneath of my parents who were pastors basically my entire life up until I was like 15 or 16 years old. And so I grew up just with very strong Christian convictions. I knew, right between wrong. I knew what truth was. And so a lot of the people that I grew up around did not have the same values or beliefs as me. And I was always just okay with that. I was like, people can believe what they want to believe. I know that I'm standing on the basis of truth, that is the Bible. So then I moved out to Colorado when I was like 15 years old. And that's when I kind of started to get more passionate about specific political topics because in Colorado, abortion is like, um, it's a very common topic in Colorado because Colorado is a very pro-abortion, liberal blue state. So I started posting videos on social media
Hmm.
around election time. I think it was 2020. It was a little bit around there in November, and I had started posting these political videos and mainly pro-life videos though about why we should be voting pro-life and different things like that. And so one of my friends that I grew up with, she found one of my videos. She started like bullying me on social media, like saying all these horrible things about how I was wrong and how I'm a terrible person because I'm pro-life. And at that point, I was kind of making videos because I was like annoyed with all of the liberal feminists on social media and with all of like these crazy people. I'm like, nobody knows what they're talking about. I'm getting frustrated because I don't see any conservative voices here on TikTok right now. So I sat down and have a conversation with my dad about how frustrated I was. And he was like, how about you just start making videos? So then that's kind of how it all started. I started getting
Hmm.
in debates with my friends. I lost a couple friends after I had started posting conservative stuff, but I just stuck with it and it's carried me really far. God has definitely used it in many ways to impact my life and other people's lives around me. So that's kind of how I started and how I was raised, and just kind of what got me involved in speaking online and having a platform.
Great, yeah. So you go by the name on Instagram at least, and I think some of you have a YouTube page as well. That's what I'm looking at over here on my screen, and you go
Mhm.
by Live It Loud, Maya. So tell me where the Live It Loud came from. Is it just a saying you used, or is there something about your personality that that's a good fit for it?
So it's actually, I had a blog when I was like 12 and it was called Live It Loud for Christ. And I had started it like, because I was just really bored and I was like, I just want to inspire my friends. So I started this blog. And then as I got older, I was kind of like, I need like a trademark or something like so people can recognize me not just by my name, but for something that I do or something I stand for. And I was like, live it loud is a
Hmm.
great way to put it because that is really how I like to live my life is to just speak, what's on my heart, what's on my mind, to preach the gospel and to tell the truth. And so I felt like live it loud was pretty fitting for what I do and what God has called me to do.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's definitely catchy. I like it. So, I want to ask about the bullying, as you say, from pro-choicers. It always seems to me, that if a pro-lifer like us sees posts from a friend, an old friend from high school kind of thing, and we respond, pro-lifers seem to respond in a fairly loving and understanding, hopefully a positive way. But it seems that the pro-choicer side of things, they get very, very angry. Were there any was the response that you got, was it an attempt to give you information, change your mind with fact, even though there's really no fact on the side of the pro-abortion side of things, or was it just sort of anger and hate?
It was a lot of it was just bullying is what it was. It was like in that time, it was like common to comment on people's, videos
Hmm.
which you disagree with, like a clown emoji, like you think they're clowns. So they were commenting, clown emojis on my page and, like, saying that I was
Hmm.
stupid. So it wasn't really an attempt to try to change my mind. There was
Yeah.
one girl in the friend group who was trying to send me statistics and stuff, but I was like, "But you're cherry picking these statistics. This is actually what's true." They all ended up blocking me afterward, and it's really sad to me because I feel like in our culture and our society today, like, what we do instead of having healthy open conversations with each other, just like, "I'm right, you're wrong. This is why you're wrong," and blah, 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 and just butt heads rather than
Hmm.
listen. Because one of the things that I like to say is that relationships change more minds than facts do, which is kind of
Hmm.
crazy and sad to say. But, like, for me, what I've seen is when I start to develop relationships with people, they're way more likely to listen to what I have to say. So I can spew a fact at someone, and even though I may be absolutely 100% right in what I'm saying, they're still not going to receive it because they feel like they're getting attacked. So for me, like an effective way that I feel like I've learned over the past like 2 years now that I've been become like a social media activist and a pro life activist. I feel like building relationships, having conversations with people, and just being kind to other people, showing that you care about them, that you care about their lives, and are willing to listen to them. Because many people that I found who are very strongly pro abortion or pro choice have sad stories in their life that have led them to be that way. And so for me, I feel like our best attempt to help other people, to encourage them, to also teach them, what's right versus wrong is to just build a relationship with them first. And that's something that we've lost in our culture and even Gen Z.
Yeah, that's very wise, and I agree with you. I think, I've given talks at universities on the pro life issue, and it's hard to not respond in an angry. Not to say that I got angry, but sometimes you get defensive and you want to just throw facts, like you said, it right in people's face, and it almost embarrasses them rather than listening and being compassionate and understanding, like you said, that I think a lot of people, I had someone else on my show say that a lot of people who maintain their pro-abortion side in spite of facts and evidence, it's because they either had an abortion or they know someone close to them that had one, and they don't want to admit that they were wrong. and
Yeah.
and I we have to be, I think, sympathetic and understanding that they're in a way they're going through a healing process,
Mhm.
as well, and we have to be sensitive to that. So that's very, very wise. I think a lot of us can learn a lesson from that. So, from your generation, well, throughout the whole country right now is the whole transgender uh, issue is going around. It seems to be sort of the hot topic of the day. And it's very, very concerning. I believe it's a life issue. If I can get your thoughts or comments on whether or not it is a life issue and what you're seeing out there from people your age in regards to the transgender issue.
Yeah, so it truly is a life issue. I totally agree with you when that's said because, if our identity can be attacked, then there's going to be a lot easier ways for us to be confused about literally everything. Because if you're confused about your identity, you're going to be confused about everything else. And so we have this. propaganda in the media and this propaganda by Planned Parenthood in different places that are supporting this transgenderism, this LGBTQ, identity stuff. They're pushing this agenda that it's okay, whatever you feel like you can be, whatever you feel like, what you look like doesn't matter, what body you're born in doesn't matter, whatever you feel like is what's true, when that's not true. And so now we have this entire generation of young men and women who are so confused on who they are, who don't feel happy in the bodies that they're born in, because there's constantly this spewing all the time of like, oh, if you're unsure about this, like if you're questioning your sexuality, you're gay. Like that's true. And that's not necessarily true all the time. A lot of people have curiosity. Like I saw this, I reacted to this video on TikTok the other day about this parent who is allowing their son to identify as a woman, and he's like, or like as a girl, and he's like 7 years old. And I was like, this is
Mhm.
child abuse, because this boy has only sisters. And I'm like, of course, when a child is young and if he has only sisters, he's going to want to play with Barbie dolls and do things that his sister does and dress up like his sisters do. But that does not mean that he is a girl. That does not mean that,
Mhm.
in his mind, he was born in the wrong body. Of course, children are going to want to be interested in what their siblings are interested in. I had a major tomboy phase when I was a little kid. Didn't want to like brush my hair. I was like, I'm just going outside to play with my friends. And like, that didn't make me a boy. That just means I was a kid who was learning more about myself. And I'm so glad that my
Mhm.
parents encouraged me into who I was born to be, rather than be like, oh, because you like Barbies, now you should identify as something else. Or, oh, because you like to play basketball as a young girl, you should be a boy. Like, I'm so glad that my parents weren't that way. But the problem that we have in this generation is that we've got this constant spewing of propaganda. Oh, if you disagree with the LGBTQ or you disagree with transgenderism, then you're just a bigot. But it's like, no, I genuinely
Mhm.
care about the health and the well-being of young people, especially older people as well, but mainly young people, which is where this is becoming a big issue, because there is a very high percentage of Gen Z that is now starting to identify as like transgender. And so we need to talk about like what the root of this is, like why are kids feeling this way, and how can we kind of um, hit the nail, hit the nail with the truth and with evidence. Because here's the thing: is that you can tell people you were born, as a woman for a reason. You were born as a man for a reason. You can tell them that all you want. You can say, this is the body you're biologically born. They're not going to care, because they don't care. It's proven that like they don't care about the evidence or the facts. They're like, if I feel this way, then I'm going to identify this way. So we really need to talk about it as like an emotional issue rather than like a science issue. Because like, yes,
Mhm.
facts over feelings, but at the same time, winning people over comes by hitting emotions. And it's the same thing with like abortion, because abortion is such an emotional issue, but so is the transgenderism issue. And so rather than attack people and be like, oh, you're a man and you're born in a man's body, you can't identify as a woman. We need to talk about why are they feeling this way, and what can we do to encourage them to seek out their true identity and learn to love themselves in the body that they're born in.
Hey, do I know how to pick them or what? Really, really well said, Maya. Really great, really excellent. Super,
Thanks, Jared.
very eloquent and right on as far as I'm concerned. So I wanna ask you, sort of going along those same lines, is do you have any thoughts on why transgender? I mean, obviously, if you're, the example you gave of going through a tomboy and someone saying, "Oh, you're a boy now." Some of it maybe has to do with people jumping to that conclusion so quickly, and maybe they're super liberal and they want their kid to be transgender, which is sick to me. But even 20 years ago, uh, there were certainly transgender people. It was pretty rare, and they hid it, I'm sure. Do you have any thoughts on what causes someone to be transgender?
Well, like I said, it's a lack of identity and like knowing who you are. And so I think that brings us back to like having a godless society, and like a society that totally rejects the idea of God, rejects the idea of morality. So now we have this generation, my generation, that's like all atheists, not all of us are atheists, but like a lot of them are atheists who totally just reject this idea of there being a true, loving, strong God. And so we have everybody being their own gods. It's like this selfishness almost, but it's really just an ignorance is what it is. And so, we have this I'm my own god, I rule my life, like all the manifesting stuff of like Satanism and all that is like it's rooted in selfishness. And so really when we take a look away from God and having a creator and having a designer. We're like, what are we here for? So obviously it's going to cause identity issues when we don't know, the reason that we're born. We don't know that we have a purpose, that we have a God that designed us in his image. It's going to raise questions. And so I think a lot of it's identity, but it also can be rooted in like chemical imbalances. Like I was listening to this podcast the other day. I'm trying to remember what the podcast was, but I've been doing a little bit of research on this, and me and my sister kind of bounce ideas back and forth. But there was a friend of a friend who basically said that he went to the doctor because he was struggling with his identity, and the doctor literally told him he had a chemical imbalance. So once he got like back into his, I can't even remember what they told him to do, but basically he took these like medication but also started changing his diet, and he was not having issues anymore with his identity or with his sexuality or anything like that. And so it's a combination of, just the godless society, but also like chemical imbalances. What are we eating? What are we putting into our bodies that's causing us to have all of these problems? Like depression has risen, anxiety has risen, all these mental health issues have risen. And I think it can all be tied back to like, what we put in our bodies, how we take care of our bodies, and, you know, just like
Mhm.
what do we believe? How are we feeding our spirit, but how are we also feeding our body?
Yeah, yeah. Again, really, really well said. I think the root of it is our lack of
Spirituality.
spirituality. It's definitely there, and I think that I think you hit it right on the head. And I guess my then follow up question would be, in your generation, do you think that there is a increase or decrease in people who are willing to show their faith? And I say that, so I'm 48 years old. So just to give a perspective, I graduated high school in 1993. Okay. And we didn't have social media. So thank God. We didn't have cameras, camera phones. Thank God. But I never really saw anybody at my age talking about faith at all. And again, we didn't have social media to be able to post stuff. Your generation does. It's not scientific because there's no way to make a poll of how many people of your generation versus mine and so on have faith. But do you think that there are more faith-filled people your age, your generation than we think?
Yes, I do. And I think that especially since COVID, that COVID kind of woke a lot of people up that like tomorrow is not promised. And so one thing that I saw a lot on social media was a rise in a lot of like Christians who got born again during the COVID time. But I also think that it's gotten to like one extreme or the other. So we have people who have given their lives to Jesus, who are willing to give everything up for Jesus. And then we have the total opposite effect that are happening on some people who are going completely nuts in the wrong direction, who are struggling with, mental health, like I said before, and struggling with all of this identity issues. So I feel like the problem is that with your generation, there was a lot of people who were kind of in the middle. There was a lot of people who had like this reverence for God, who went to church, like, you know, for the holidays or whatever it was, like on Christmas. So we had
Mhm.
like this like in between, I think was kind of more of the word that I'm looking for, where you had people who had like a fear for God, who respected God, who weren't necessarily strong believers in their faith, who were going to church, but they still knew God was real. They respected other Christians, even if they weren't fully in the faith themselves. And so I think it's gone from like people having like a reverence and a fear of God and like respecting God and respecting Christians to like this whole opposite where it's like you're either a Christian or you absolutely hate God and you know, don't want anything to do with Christians.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sounds right. I mean, yeah, my generation is every generation is different, and they deal with different things. Like I said, we didn't have social media, we didn't have phones, camera phones, and recording everything. And thank goodness for that because yeah, yeah, that's all I'll say. I'll leave it at that. Is that I'm glad that we didn't have phones on everybody. I want to ask you a question, and I was just thinking of this question. It wasn't something I gave you ahead of time. I gave you topics, is what I gave you is, hey, we'll talk about these general things. Um,
Yeah.
but I have a question about your generation. If you don't want to answer it or you don't have an answer, that's fine. I'll just take it out of this
Yeah.
interview. But I do see certainly a lot of people of your generation. I get guests and I engage with people and promote my show on social media. So I'm on social media all the time. And I have found phenomenal people of your age. who are involved in the life issue, who are conservative, and I get them on because to me it's very exciting. I have kids that are around, your age. I have a 21-year-old, right? So, and I see a lot of people, specifically women who are about your age, and they have great and wonderful things on their social media, like Christian, I love Jesus, and really awesome things like that. They like and they repost super good conservative Christian things, and then I look at, I look to see, oh, is this someone that might be on my show or somebody worth following, whatever. And this same person, every other picture is a bikini shot. Okay. And I delete them. I'm like, okay, you're gone. There
Mhm.
seems to be a bit of a hip. Yours is not like that, by the way. So just
I
showing you,
appreciate
just
you
so
saying that.
anyone listening is not going to think that's why I'm saying that. I'm saying that because I do see people like you who are like, I see some of their posts and stuff, and I'm like, wow, this is really great, very Christian. They're proud. And then every other picture is them in a bikini and a seductive look. What is going on there? I don't know what to make of it. I think it's obviously not good, but what are they
Mhm.
doing? Are they being false Christians? Are they using their Christianity in a sense to get likes or followers? What do I make of that?
Yeah, so it can be hard because each person is different, and I'm not gonna name drop this organization because I've worked with them in the past, but I do remember, like, going to this conservative, Christian, supposedly Christian event, and all of these women who are claiming to be, like, these God-loving Christians are just, like, not living lives that really represent that very well, and so it got me frustrated. I was very frustrated for a while. I remember, like, I shed tears over it at how frustrated I was. I was like, I really wanted to make, like, good godly female friends and even good godly male friends that actually want to live for God. And I was having such a hard time finding that. And I'm like, why in a Christian conservative movement and organization am I not able to find that? And so I honestly, it all goes back to identity. I really think like, a lot of people who post themselves on social media, it's because they have insecurity and they're trying to fill this whole of, they need approval, or they need someone to like what they look like. They just need to feel appreciated. And for some reason, I know that a lot of women find a lot of, you know, confidence when they post themselves on social media. And so for me, it kind of shows that it's just, again, a lack of identity. I feel like all of these issues all tie down to identity and who we see ourselves as in Christ. And so, for these women out there who are, posting these pictures of themselves, or even men, because there's a lot of men who do it too, and a lot of men who, say they're Christian and then are out the next night drinking and partying and, getting drunk and blacking out and all this stuff. And so I think for me, we really need to see like a genuine love for Jesus. And I'm not saying that those people aren't saved or don't know Jesus, because I'm not going to judge someone based off their Instagram profile. Like their relationship with God and like their relationship with Jesus, that's between them and God. That's not for me to judge. But I do think in order to represent Christ well, we should represent ourselves well, because our bodies are a temple. And so we're supposed to represent Christ in everything we do. And obviously posting yourself and your body seductively on social media is not representing Christ or yourself well. So again, I think it just takes back to, insecurity and identity, and like knowing who we are in Christ and knowing that what he says about us is enough to give us the confidence to go date in our day-to-day life, that we shouldn't feel the needs to post ourselves on social media. Like occasionally, like I'll post like a picture of me sitting on the beach, but I'm not gonna like show everything. You know what I'm saying? Because like, yeah, I want to show people my life and that I'm having, a good time with my sister on the beach, but I don't feel the need to like uncover everything or show everything, because also, that's for me and my future husband. Nobody else should be able to explore me except for my future husband. And so I think it comes down to, self-respect, identity, all of those things. When I look at it, I'm like, I am trying to keep myself for that person. Who's going to
Mhm.
be my husband one day, and I don't want everyone on social media to be like, "Oh, I've seen it first," you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanna make a point that it's not everybody, and obviously I don't know,
Yeah.
I see lots of people, some people I'm connected to, some I'm not, some I unsubscribe to them when I start seeing that stuff, and there's nothing wrong, like, I've taken pictures of my family and I at the beach, fine, there's no problem, but everyone knows what I'm talking about as far as
Yeah,
the types of pictures
the
that are
intention
posted.
behind the pictures.
Yeah, I mean, some of them you're like, "Come on, that's not a spontaneous picture."
Yeah.
Just don't go there. So I'm just encouraging all of you listening, if you're one of those people, stop doing that.
Mhm. And
It
know
it
that, like
just doesn't.
yeah, and, like, know that, like, you're more than your body. To, like, the listeners out there, it's like your body is not all that you have to offer to the world. You have so much deepness to your soul and who you are that you don't need to post yourself in order to get likes or views or follows. There's a lot more to you than just that.
Yep, absolutely. Very well said. So what are you doing now, Maya? What are you doing, and what does the future look like for you?
So I'm hoping to stay in the pro-life movement because that's where my heart has really been. Right now, I'm working for Live Action org. They're an incredible organization. I get to work
Oh
underneath,
yeah.
Lila, and just a bunch of wonderful people on their team. I love, love, love Live Action. If you ever have an opportunity to work with them or do anything with them, I totally recommend it because they're just an excellent organization, is the way to put it. So I get to work on their marketing team. I worked for them contracted, and then finally I got hired on as an intern, and now I'm still an intern, but it's more of an official part-time position. So I really love it. I love the work I get to do because, it's literally saving lives like on a daily
Hmm.
basis and, impacting the lives of women everywhere, not just in the United States, but around the world. So for me, I want to stick with live action for a while and kind of see where that takes me. But in the future, I'm hoping that I get to stay involved in the pro life movement and just see the lives of women and children changed, and also do more step up in the sense of like, I'm considering one day maybe opening my own like pregnancy resource center, or, something that can help women and, help them to ensure that they have, an easier life when they're pregnant and they face an unplanned pregnancy. So that's kind of my dream, is to just stay helping women and save babies.
Yeah, excellent, excellent dreams, excellent desires. Yes, love live action. Know them very very well. Excellent organization, and so yeah, I wish you continued luck and success working there, promoting live action and all that you're doing in the future. So, how can people? Are you interested in people connecting with you? I know I gave away your handle, but
Yeah.
if you're interested.
Any platform you can find me as Live It Loud Maya. That's me.
Live it loud, Maya. She's
Follow
definitely
me
living
on
living it. She's definitely living it loud. Really great
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, very, again, I find so many people of your age, your generation, that are so wise, and I'm always impressed because I was never like that at your age at all. And it's always impressive to me. Even my own kids, I'm shocked at how mature and smart they are when I compare to myself and my dumb friends when I was their age. But you're really doing great stuff. Congratulations. Congrats to your parents as well, who obviously have done a great job. And really keep up the great work. And thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Jerry. I really appreciate it. God
Of
bless.
course, my pleasure. And thank all of you for listening to this episode of Fide's podcast. Please check out all my podcasts and all the different podcast apps on YouTube, on Rumble, on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, on rightamericamedia.com, and on WHK Radio /podcasts.com as well. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.